Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing surprising dumper triggers. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing surprising dumper triggers. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, it's useful to know what triggers make your ex think of you. It's quite possible that you've heard of triggers such as hearing a song that you both loved. But what about other triggers? In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 surprising dumper triggers. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is emojis. So lots of people don't realise the power emojis can have. Emojis can really showcase our identity. And you will probably know now you think about it, that your friends and loved ones likely text chat in different ways. This would also be the case with your ex, and this would have also been the case from your ex's perspective of you. Now thinking about if, how and when you use emojis, this can be a great way to consider if your ex will think of you. Let's just say that you had some type of in-joke in which you would always post a certain type of emoji in a certain instance. Maybe this type of emoji was not common. Maybe this was one of the ones that you would only send one another. Now consider that your ex-dumper in the future sees this emoji. Now maybe somebody else sends them it. Maybe they are scrolling through the list of emojis and just notice the one that you would always use to send. This is a trigger, and although it's surprising, it can be very powerful indeed. A trigger is something which makes someone think of you. In this instance, we're talking, of course, about your ex, your now dumper, and we're thinking about if, when, and how, and why they would think of you. Now, just because this isn't as commonplace as the song that you both used to listen to together, this is just as important. It pulls on your ex's memory, and therefore it can really pull on their heart. This might sound a little silly, it might seem something that you didn't expect, but that's exactly why I want to be giving you the surprising dumper triggers, and not just speaking about your favourite movie, your favourite song, etc. So, now you know that your ex-dumper may think of you if and when they come across an emoji that you used to send to them. Is there anything you can do to increase the chance of them thinking of you in a positive way, not just any old way? Well, if you get to the communication stage, when you and your ex are communicating once more, if your ex-dumper reaches out to you, if you start to reconnect via text, you can use these emojis once again to your benefit. Think back to a time when you was having a great moment together. Think back to a time of when an emoji could speak 1,000 words. And maybe you could slip an emoji in during your conversations during the communication stage. Now you might be slightly confused as to what I mean and how this can really plant a positive memory, plant a positive seed in your ex's mind. But honestly, emojis can be very, very powerful at doing that. Just as general speech patterns, texting concepts, it all connects to one another within the communication stage. If you would like help, support and advice due to the communication stage or anything through breakup recovery or trying to get an ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your specific unique circumstances. Go to my website www.dateme.tips and find out more details on my audio coaching and more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast about surprising dumper triggers. And point number 2 is brands. So sometimes you might hear people say, well, one of the most common triggers is a location, and that would be absolutely true. If, for instance, you go to a location that you don't often go to, and maybe the last time you did was with your ex, that will make you think of your ex and vice versa. But what lots of people don't realise is that brands can be even more powerful than locations. So when I say brands, this means anything which can be definitive and defined as something you associate with your ex. This might be clothing. Did your ex always buy a certain type of clothing brand? Did they always wear a certain type of style and brand which you always think of them? If you can think of this regarding your ex, then they could probably think of it with you as well. If and when they see an advert or a commercial for this type of brand, this type of clothing, they will likely think of you. If they were to see somebody else walking by them in the city or wherever, and they are wearing the same type of clothing that you wear, they will likely think of you. Now, brands are not just connected with clothing. They could be connected, for instance, with hotels. A little moment ago, I was just speaking about locations being a powerful trigger, but so can branded hotels. Maybe you had a wonderful holiday, a wonderful vacation, and you were staying at a certain type of hotel, and you will always remember the name of that hotel. Well, let's just say your ex is walking wherever they may be going, and they just go by a branded hotel with the same name of where you stayed. Even if where you stayed was in a different town, city, or country to where they are right now, if and when they see the same type of hotel, the same style, the same brand of hotel, they will think of you. Another associated example to this is restaurants. Maybe you always enjoyed going to a certain restaurant, a certain branded restaurant. Well, when your ex sees one of those branded restaurants again, they are going to be thinking of you. As you can see, this is wide-ranging. Whatever you can associate with a brand and connect it to your ex, they will likely do the same to you. And if and when they see this brand, if and when they experience it again, whether they see it on television, whether they walk by it, whether they see somebody else wearing it, using it, whatever it may be, they will think of you. And that is why brands is a surprising dumper trigger. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about surprising dumper triggers. And point number 3 is pets. So let's just say that your ex had a certain type of pet that you absolutely knew that they loved more than anything. Maybe it was a dog, maybe it was a cat, maybe it was anything at all. Now just consider the actual type of animal it was. So not just a cat or a dog or a rabbit or a lizard or whatever it may be, but what type of pet, what type of animal, what type of distinct subspecies within that animal did they have? Okay, because if you have a cat, a dog, a rabbit, whatever it is, it's going to be a specific type. It's going to be a specific breed. If you can remember what your ex had, then you might see an animal one day in the future which is similar or the same type of breed as the animal, the pet that your ex had, and you're going to think of your ex. And once again, like everything we're talking about in today's podcast, the same goes the other way around. Your ex will think of you if you have a pet that they then see something similar of wherever it may be. It doesn't matter where they see it. It doesn't matter if they see it on television. It doesn't matter if they walk by it. It doesn't matter if they see it in a pet store. If they see a pet, an animal, which looks like the type of pet or animal that you have, they're going to be thinking of you. It's a natural trigger, a surprising trigger, but a natural trigger when you actually consider it. Now, not only pets in general, but maybe you had a favourite type of animal, okay? You probably don't have a dolphin as a pet, but perhaps dolphins were one of your favourite animals, and whenever you saw them on TV, you absolutely loved it. Maybe you watched nature documentaries about certain types of animals. Again, if your ex the dumper knows that you had a favourite animal, favourite type, favourite breed, anything to do with that, if and when they see information, whether this is in a newspaper, a magazine, on TV, maybe they are going somewhere where they see such an animal, such as on safari or in a zoo, then they're going to be thinking of you. These animal and pet triggers can be absolutely incredibly powerful because animals and pets have a special bond with so many people. Like I said earlier, sometimes people have a pet, maybe your ex had a pet, but was the most important thing in their life. You probably thought, well, they love their pet more than me, they love their pet more than anything. Now, if you are the same, if you have an animal, if you have a pet but you love, maybe you don't have a pet, but you have an animal that you love so much that you support via donations, possibly to a charity, your ex-dumper will know this. And if and when they see or hear about this animal or this pet, they will think of you. The bond we have as people with pets and with animals is so special, it's so strong, that conjures up the emotions that if and when your ex-dumper can associate this, it is extra powerful. Because the love we have for an animal can be incredibly strong, and they will know how much you love a certain pet or animal, and therefore they can see that love and they can feel that bond if and when they are thinking of that animal. This can conjure up all of those positive emotions, and that's what we want from triggers. We want them to be positive triggers. We don't want them to be negative triggers. We don't want your ex-dumper to have a trigger when they think of you in an annoying, frustrating or upsetting way. That wouldn't be helpful at all. We want your ex-dumper to be thinking of you in a positive sense. So the emoji, for instance, in point number 1, could be something that makes them smile, could be something that makes them laugh, could be something that they think you're cheeky, maybe a little bit naughty, whatever it was that you were sending, this could be something that conjures up those positive memories and thoughts in the trigger. For brand, that might be connected to a fantastic memory, like I said, at a hotel or a restaurant, for instance, or maybe clothing was the other example I gave, and that can be something which makes your ex-dumper think of you in a stylish way, thinking, my ex-dumper used to look incredible in these types of clothing, they loved this. That's the type of thing that can make them think of you in a positive way. As I said in point number 3, pets and animals, they have such an emotional bond to us humans. These types of positive feelings will transfer to your ex-dumper's mind if and when they see an animal, a pet, something where they can connect it to you and know that you love that animal, that pet. They will feel that love, it will go through their mind, it will be a positive trigger. Now, of course, there's no guarantee that your ex-dumper is going to reach out to you if they have a trigger, but what we can say is that they will certainly be thinking of you, and this can slowly but surely start to grow romantic emotional attraction in their mind. And if and when this attraction hits the necessary high point, that is when they'll reach out to you. Imagine a fuel can. Imagine a canister which has very little fuel inside. That is the example of what I say is romantic emotional attraction when somebody ends a relationship. Your ex-dumper ended a relationship, there's very little attraction left in the can. Okay, but there's something there still. There's always going to be a residue, and we need to grow that attraction. We need to fill up that fuel can until it's at the maximum point. Then they will reach out to you. And if you consider that every positive trigger might just be an example of some fuel being poured in the can, a little bit more romantic emotional attraction poured in the can, it shows that although they might not be ready to reach out to you during the first trigger, then by the time they've had 10, 20, 30 triggers over 6 months to a year or so, that is when they might reach out to you because the fuel can, the romantic emotional attraction, then will be full. So, surprising dumper triggers, yes, but probably not ones that you thought of straight away, but they can be just as powerful as somebody's favourite song, favourite movie, or some of the classic, well-known triggers that I spoke about on my podcast previously. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.